Okay, I've started recording, so all yours.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Email Specialist Virtual Bootcamp. Let's see if I go on full screen. Sorry, it's been a minute.
You can go to the very bottom, next to that, the Zoom one. There's a slideshow there. Yeah. That one,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm so used to the Google Slides nowadays. All right, so let's get started. My name is Aisha Marie Swain, and I'm an email developer for RentPath. I also do two other little volunteering groups for Women of Email, which is a nonprofit organization here in the US. And also I am a co-content admin for How to SFMC, which is a place where you can find as many places to set up your skills, look at everything. Like, it's a side project, it's in the beginning stages, but we have a lot of great things going on at How to SFMC, including a bi-weekly meetup and everything else. Also, moving on to that, we have, I have been in email marketing for 7 years now. And I've spoken at two small conferences, one for Salesforce Connections 2019, and then for a smaller world tour for Movable Ink back in 2018. So anyways, enough about me. You're here to learn. So let's start over what we've had so far. We've had design best practices, we've had email deliverability, and today we have content creation. So here we are with Content Builder. So content, we'll only discuss the email campaign portion, but it's important to note the following. Content Builder is good for helping build landing pages, and it works well with supplying landing pages with assets. But build these pages like any marketing landing page, but also taking into consideration the technical parameters, requirements, and the business needs. Also, since we're only discussing the email portion, other studios really interact well with Content Builder, but it's like the heart of where all the contents and assets may live beyond just the cloud pages. So anyways, before you begin any project, you always have to think about the parameters of an email and what the ask is and what the business need is. So where do you bring value to the user when you're sending the campaigns? What data do you need to build this? And permissions, where did this data come from? I know a lot of the times we like to help people and help our coworkers, our stakeholders, our clients, but you should always question, where did the data come from? Because that's going to help you be successful in any email campaign you work on. Because if you don't know where it's coming from, or you know where it's coming from and it's not correctly set up, that just leads up to a lot of issues. So, and then also think of the possible use cases. Think of everything wrong or right, especially when you're doing something that's related to the messaging, that's customized, that's the audience itself. Then you also, how it is connected to the data, which shows the content. Anyways, Email Studio. Here's a quick screenshot of the Enterprise Edition. And the Corporate Edition may vary. I know that over here, I don't know if everyone can see the mouse. Over here is where you can jump in, but I know they can toggle here on the other side, which applications show up for you. It just depends if you're set up as an admin or not. So here is a quick review of if you're an admin. Make sure all of this area for content builder settings are set up as enabled. No matter how many business units you have, make sure that everything is set up here. This used to be a lot simpler. Recently, it got a lot more complex with the newer releases on Salesforce Marketing Cloud. So definitely spend some time to look around and see how your settings are set up before you start building anything, especially if it's your first time. I know that when I first started on Marketing Cloud, I was given admin privileges, like super admin, but let's not get into that. You could definitely do a lot of havoc if you don't do it correctly. So the email message, the creation process. Email content creation, part 1. So there's a lot of different content types that are available on Salesforce Marketing Cloud. These are the ones that you have, the source files, and these actually help assemble the email, like the JPEGs, the PNGs, the GIFs. And not all users will have the same permissions, so you always have to double check to see if you're the one building it or if you're the one reviewing it for either approvals or anything else, to see that you have the access in order to make the edits. So then you have the content blocks. So ranging from HTML, the reference, image, carousel to Einstein. I actually checked for today's presentation and I think I saw 25. So it's a lot of different content blocks that you guys can all use. My personal favorite are code snippets, but you have to definitely be at least a little bit decent with hand coding, HTML, CSS, and at least a little bit of AMPscript. So, and then you have templates. So templates, this goes into Template Builder immediately once you click on it. And then from there, you're inserted into this area where you can insert, HTML and CSS. I would advise not to put AMPscript. You can, but I would advise against it and put that into like code snippets or any other content blocks that would insert themselves into templates. And it also creates that WYSIWYG, which is the template builder. So here is a screenshot of the code snippets themselves, and then how you go in on the other side and start creating. Anyways, so going on, we have the content types that are available. Part 2, you have email. You can paste HTML or grab them from your previously created existing template, or you use the code snippets themselves that are separated. Again, definitely if you're a coder, this is going to be your jam. So and then you have enhanced dynamic content map. Personally, I don't use this, but I know that a lot of people have, especially in demos, but I haven't seen it myself in the wild quite yet. It's an easier way of building out dynamic content systems within Salesforce Marketing Cloud. But personally, I see more of the other use cases that we see here on the email content creations, the other content types. So these are some of the content blocks that when you're creating a template-based email that you can see. Here you have the buttons, the code snippets, the freeform blocks, the HTML, image blocks, and text. Recently, I know that Einstein content is now available for most BUs, if not all, and a lot of other things that can be really helpful. In general, I don't see too much adoption on the social media side on the bottom part. But who knows? Maybe there's definitely some really good use cases for it. In general, though, the basic content ones are going to be the most frequently used, and maybe a few of them on the advanced content. There's some really great use cases for the interactive content for like the image carousel. But on this one, I would definitely do a lot of testing before you place it anywhere, because it can't be ingested interactively from a data extension. That would have to be hand coded over here. So content creation and templates. This is how you go in for content builder. Step one, you create it, you go down either email message, email template, and you go to here. And then also, just to kind of bring this along, this is also how you upload assets. So anyways, step two, you add the content itself here, and then you preview and test afterwards. Here are the instructions to go through in Email Studio. Content tab, click create. It's honestly one of the most frequently used spaces, because since I'm an email developer, everything I do is related to creating all of the emails, make sure that they all interact correctly, and send it off to our engineer. Oh, let's see. I guess part of the presentation didn't show up a little correctly. Anyways, so HTML emails, kind of a general note. HTML-based emails are hand-coded from scratch. When creating them in Content Builder, HTML code can be entered, pasted, or uploaded into the editor along with code snippets. So if you're coding in, let's say, VS Code or Sublime Text, anything else like that, you can drop off the entire HTML over without even using this section. You could just drop it off as an HTML. So Content Builder generates the preview when you enter it. And this is actually a sample of one of my own templates that I have re-engineered a little bit here. And rendering can vary by browser. So sometimes, and this is something that I wanted to kind of be transparent with, sometimes it is important to check not just in Chrome, but also in Firefox, because sometimes you get rendering issues that you think are going to go live everywhere when really it's software. It's the actual Email Studio might not render it as appropriately as you think, which is what leads to other parts. Later on, I will get to that. So here you have the paste HTML template. When creating the HTMLs, HTML code can be entered, pasted, or uploaded to the editor. It generates a preview on the right-hand side. And then we have the sample templates that exist within Content Builder that you guys can all like play around with, see how it works. They're all very basic, and some of them are a bit dated. So I would definitely use this and make it your own, or come up with your own in general. In general, I think it's always best to learn and what's out there, see how it's done, and then make it your own if you have the time. So the standard templates. So Marketing Cloud does provide you these several standard templates out of the box. And if time allows, make it your own. So these are 3 things that are really important, but it definitely varies by country. You should always have a physical, and what I mean by varies by country is that there's a lot of data practices that are different from country to country, and in the US, state to state. So make sure that you know where you're sending them. So here are some other things here. There's the physical mailing address that should always be in an email, regardless where it's coming to anywhere in the world. A link to the preference center, and then a one-click unsubscribe link. Don't make people click too much. You're going to get punished. Users know what they're getting when they're getting an email. They've been getting emails for at least 20 years, if not longer. So at this point, I think it's good to say, don't make people sign on. Once you make the landing page for unsubscribes, don't, just make it easy, and you will never have too many issues on that end. If a template is not so if a standard template is edited, sorry, I just reread this part. So if a template is not if a template is edited, it's not automatically reflected on the respective emails. You should always go back and double check on the standard templates to see if your changes have been impacted. So in this standard templates, make sure that each impacted email that you've edited is manually updated to reflect the template changes. So it can get you in trouble if you make an edit and you see that it hasn't been saved. Essentially, that's it. So there's a lot of popularity, especially amongst IT circles or anything else like that, to sending out text-only emails. But there are things that you have to be careful if you want to send out only text emails, because the opens themselves are not tracked in text-only emails because there's no tracking pixel within there. You can have a whole bunch of information there. You can set it up correctly, but it's a lot harder to track text-only emails, just simply because it's probably best to do just an HTML creative that, can mimic a text-only email and can still be tracked. I think that's probably the best use case to do it, unless it's something very minor that you don't really need to have any business use case for opens, and even then it can be argued. So emails from existing emails that have already been built. So here you have a screenshot of the defined properties, the add content, the preview and test. And when you're creating emails from existing emails in Content Builder, a copy of the existing email is created and then it can be edited. Then depending on the type of the existing email, the respective editor options will be available. So this is where you get to the fun part, my favorite part, the customization of the emails themselves. So personalization strings in AMPscript. Originally, this was just personalization strings, but it's important to know that there's several things that are standard for Salesforce Marketing Cloud for AMPscript that are not standard in other applications. So here you have this simpler version here on email ADR for address, ADDR, and here it'll be resolved into a subscriber's email address and things like that. So there's a standard set of personalization strings that can be created from data extension fields that can be helpful for rendering your emails. And it can be placed in subject lines, pre-headers, and content areas of emails. Now, if you have a question and you're thinking, well, this is great, but does it show up while I'm coding it, or does it show up when I send it? No, it always shows up at the send time. But you can preview it to see how it would render if you go back to preview and test, you'll see how it shows up. In the meantime, if you're making an email and you put in some personalization strings and you're wondering if it's going to show up, it's not going to show up when you're first coding it. You have to go to the tab, preview and test to see how it shows up. So if no value can be resolved on the personalization string, it will appear blank. So at first you're thinking, wait, did I do something wrong? More than likely you did. There is no error message for the most part. So at that point you have to just kind of do some debugging on your end to just figure out where you can find out where you went wrong. So make sure that you always define a value for the attributes and the fields used in personalization strings. That being said, there's also dynamic content that's a lot easier. It's just more fun to use for ones that don't want to be coding everything. You have the Astro here, you have Cody, and then you have Appy. And if you want one section or the other, you just set it up in rules. And this is set up also within the message. So this is called dynamic content. And in this area, you can set up these rules. And these are setup rules for subject lines, pre-headers, and then the content areas. Here it is set up for the content area. You're not going to have like this really cool like Salesforce emoji show up on your email. No, you're going to have this set up in an email message, and then you'll pick which rule you want. Anyways, so dynamic content honestly is a lot of fun when you have very simple use cases. When it gets very complex, I think that's where AMPscript can be very powerful, because sometimes you're building 48 different use cases. You have to make sure you have all the assets ready for that. And this is fun for the simpler messages, but make sure that you have everything ready for the more complex ones, especially when it comes to like loyalty programs. So here's some more examples of AMPscript, of personalization strings in AMPscript. So the personalization strings are not case sensitive, but must be denoted when they're between two starting and ending percent signs. So if you ever run into errors, you might have forgotten a percent sign, or you might have not done it correctly. You put it in the wrong area and then you forgot to name it correctly. That totally happens, especially if you don't have a uniform naming conventions for data extensions and how you call them out. And also, from here on out, you can use AMPscript to make sure that the output is clean, because a lot of the times you'll get like people put in their first name all in lowercase, or they put their information in general all lowercase, but you want it to correctly show up. Like here you have special offers for Cindy, May 2020, and then special offers for Micah, May 2020. So you see how it all gets together here. You have first name, and then you have the month, and then you have the year. These last two are very universal, and it will work across all the different parts of Content Builder. So you can't have too many issues on there. And if you have specific needs and use cases for AMPscript, all you have to do is double check the Salesforce documentation, or what I like to also check is the AMPscript guide. Also a separate site, but very awesome for good examples. So AMPscript in general, It's server-side scripting language for Marketing Cloud. It is embedded in several products and across channels programmatically. AMPscript can be used for advanced personalization by fetching the information from multiple data sources based on logic. Marketing Cloud processes AMPscript at the point of where it is embedded to render content individually for each subscriber. For email marketing, AMPscript can be embedded directly into HTML emails, which is why we're here. So AMPscript can also be used as an example for like landing pages, although you also have to make sure that when you embed the AMPscript and everything else in there, that it is appropriately working and making sure that the activities that you're trying to log in work as efficiently and correctly as possible, because sometimes you can get into trouble if the data setup isn't correctly done. So the email campaigns, sending and deploying. Once you're done with the creation, once you're done with testing, everything else like that, now you're ready to send. Well, here we go. When you have everything set up, this is one of the most important parts, or actually the most important part before you send an email. Email sends can be saved in send definitions for later sending, and then saved send definitions can be started either manually or triggered automatically based on action or within or outside of Marketing Cloud. That's where some of the other clouds come in. The relationship between templates, emails, and send definitions can be visualized as possible. So here you have the template, you have the email, and you have several definitions. So as an example, you have send definition 1 might be marketing messages, and the other one might be transactional. Email message 2 is another form of marketing, and then another one of transactional. So let's say, as an example here, to kind of give you guys a better understanding of it, is when you have a template and you have that feeds into 2 separate emails, think of them as maybe 2 separate brands. That's why they would have 2 separate send definitions on one, and then another set of 2 separate send definitions on the other. Because this might be, let's say, a master template. There's a lot of different use cases you can use, and the send definitions can be started manually or triggered via API calls. And then there's also the send definitions for user-initiated sends, or also the triggered send definitions. User-initiated send definitions are started manually or automatically based on events in Marketing Cloud. The definition of what starts user-initiated sends is maintained in Marketing Cloud, such as like we have Automation Studio, which is absolutely awesome. And you have user-initiated emails that can be sent in subscriber lists, groups, data extensions, or publication lists, or data filters. Personally, I think data extensions are the way to go in case you have any other use cases for the others. I think that the most powerful ones are coming in data extensions, because if you ever expand your program, you don't have to rebuild your subscriber list or groups or publication list, but there are use cases for all of them. So a triggered send definition. A triggered send definition is based off of events outside of Marketing Cloud. So here you have triggered emails that are sent to individual recipients and therefore can be used for send automated and personalized responses to the subscriber activities. So pretend here that you're on a website and you ask to receive more information, that would be a triggered send definition. So receipts of triggered emails can be added to subscriber lists or data extensions, and their subscriber status is updated automatically, which is awesome for us in Marketing Cloud, because sometimes you can have maybe thousands of people coming into these data extensions. So you have to always make sure that things are working. Triggered sends separate email content from email sends, like this. The email content and tracking can be maintained in Marketing Cloud, while logic or trigger email send is maintained in external systems. This allows for making changes in email content and tracking emails from Marketing Cloud. So here's some examples. Here on the left-hand side, you have Marketing Cloud, the emails, the triggered send definitions, then the API calls that bring in the logic for that triggered send definition. Triggered sends. Create a triggered email interaction. So it's all in Email Studio, and it responds to a subscriber action within an email message. There are some limitations to triggered sends, but it's important to be aware that the 500 send definitions is really just hard to surpass. So in general, a lot of people, I don't think I've ever seen anyone just use every single one of them. That's a lot. Here's an example of how triggered sends show up. This is coming from my own business unit. Here we have the triggered sends, an example of how it would look like. This is how you get there. You go to the interactions tab, you click on messages, you click email, click triggered, create, and then you create the triggered send over here. Step by step, a lot of what I do is also look at the documentation to make sure that I've thought of some things that hadn't been done before, or if something has been archived, to make sure that it's not still working. So then you have the email preview and the send flow. Preview and test send. Not all accounts are set up with a Litmus integration, so it's a separate contract to your organization. So if, let's say, you want to test your emails, but you don't have it, if you have email on Acid or anything else, make sure that you can make sure that you have availability to test in other platforms if you have the budget for it. I know that Litmus integration is really good because it renders AMPscripts. You don't have that with the competitors like Email on Acid or 250 OK. It has made many major clients that come with Litmus. Sorry, stop, going back. Anyways, if you're logged in and you're so going back over to just previewing every use case. When you have a subscriber preview and its attributes, make sure you can click through here and you'll see different imagery. Let's say you have this one here for extra 30% for this person, but it'll be 20% for the next one. That's where a lot of the AMPscript comes in, or any of the dynamic content in general. It has also many major clients. Account login, you can build and test. Anyways, here you have the send flow, part 1. So always make sure that you have the correct data extension or list to send to, and that you are correctly suppressing your audience and not sending to the unsubscribes. Email mistakes happen, but But to mitigate this, create your own test data extension. So this is something that not everyone seems to do, because you make your own data extensions always on the individuals, or you send just to one email address over and over again. Well, sometimes you have so many attributes that you have to think of and test information that you have to just, let me just make up my own test data extension. Well, you set it up so that you can have some really great previews that are seen like here. The test data extension here would be set up coming in on this area, rather than doing the individuals, which is what I was talking about previously. So make sure that when you're setting everything up, that you have the correct send definitions and the sender profiles, everything else is working correctly. So make sure that you send a test before you ever send out an email. Best advice I could ever say is just make sure you've tested. To me, I like to do at least 2 to 3 times to myself, and then you could send out to the wider team. Unless you're that confident that you've previously set this email up yourself, that you're fine. A lot of the times, and this is just more personal advice, a lot of the times we get kind of like confident that it's going to be fine, it's perfect. You never know. And if you have time and it's not going to be a deployment, there's a random emergency, make sure that you have at least another pair of eyes, even if you're very confident, because you don't know if you did a typo or anything else like that. So here you have the send flow part 2. This kind of just goes through the deployment process, because sometimes the test doesn't work. Like I have an issue going on sometimes in one of my business units that I send out emails for, is that sometimes the preview and test doesn't work, and you might have to do a live send. And a live send is an actual campaign, but that actual campaign can be a test data extension. So that test data extension can be just you, or it can be other people, but make sure that you have already previously set it up, so you don't send it out to the actual audience. So the send flow is integrated here. You have to make sure that you go through the define properties, select audience, configure the delivery, and then you review and send. So on the define properties, here we go. Oh, I guess we don't have the screenshot for it, but I can just talk through that on this part. So in the define properties, this is the part that helps you track the email. When you track the email, you have certain parameters that are used in the overall marketing department that will help others. Whether it goes into campaign IDs, or there's a specific business unit that it's coming out of to help out with those properties. And when you're done on that end, because if you send an email and you don't track it, it's not worth it. You always have to make sure that the properties are defined and the audience is selected. So from there on out, you select the audience. If there's any suppressions, make sure that you have that in your spreadsheet or project management tool anywhere else, because suppressions are what help a lot of programs be successful, especially when they're very complex programs. So, and from there, you configure the delivery, and then you review everything and send. Previously, we never had this review and send, but it is a really nice add-on, because in classic content, you did not have this. In the new content builder, since I'm now dating myself, I'm not new at the application. it's a lot better because you see in the review section the audience that you're sending to, the actual sample of where it's going, and it even does the mobile version, just in case. Although I wouldn't take it to heart because you've already done testing, hopefully, on Litmus or any other platform that you can test on. So I think we have the end of the presentation. Yes, we do. That was a bit of an abrupt end, actually. Sorry.
Thanks, Aisha. Aisha, there's a,
Yes.
a request from Maria on the call, like if she wanted to see dynamic content. So can I go ahead and share that from my org?
Yeah. Go right ahead. Should I stop sharing?
Yes, please. I'll just quickly show that, and then feel free to add, please, like because you're the expert on this one. So
yeah. And if there's any other questions, for sure, please go all ahead. Yeah.
All right. So this is. Can you guys see my screen, by the way?
Yes.
Oh, okay. All right, cool.
Yeah.
So team, like Aisha was saying earlier, when I have this sample email that we created dynamic content in, it's pretty straightforward. Like if you go to the content, like if I have a template here, you have like different content blocks that you can actually like pull in. Like these are the content blocks. So if I wanted an HTML, I can just pull in and then start editing it, right? So similarly over here, there's something called dynamic content that you can actually pull in. So we actually pull that in, and this one is a dynamic content that we did, right? So if I want to edit it, on the left side, like it'll ask you, okay, what's the rules that you want to set? So by default, like it will say, okay, what do you want to show? Like so for the default one, I actually added a picture of this one here. Okay, and then the rule one, like if it says if you want to edit it, you can use depending on which data extension that you chose, based on the filter that you put in. Like I put for all the male customers. So if gender is equal to male, I want this picture to show up, right? And then if I want, if it's actually the ladies, then I want a different picture to show up. And if I don't know the gender, like in the data, if it's the data is missing for gender, then it'll actually show a default picture. So it's very, very straightforward. You can just go ahead and then configure this. And then once you're done, you can go ahead and then preview it. So like as I was saying earlier, you have to come to this page here, and then you have to choose the data extension that you want. I've already selected it. So it's the customer DE1, and I just select the record. So as you can see, I've actually said use this particular one. I said if the gender is female, I wanted the ladies specials to show up, right? If it's male, it should be a different picture here. So if I look at this, you can see the data actually changing for each click that you do. It actually cycles through every record that you have in the data extension, and automatically during the preview, you will see the name of the person, because that was also a personalization string, like she said. So you'll see okay, what is the first name reflecting correctly here, right? Is the month, year coming correctly? If there's any other personalization that you have done, you should actually reflect here as well. So here, if it's actually for male, it's showing the correct picture. For this one, you see the gender is missing. So we have the default picture show up, right? So go through multiple different cases and ensure everything's working. So this is pretty much straightforward, how you create a dynamic content in your email. Any questions?
Thank you so much.
It's a really great example, honestly, to see it live like that. Especially if you're not going to want to hand code it in AMPscript.
Yeah. I mean, these very, very simple ones that you can actually do, but like Aisha said, it's not always it's a very simple, quite a few times you have to customize a lot. That's where AMPscript comes in, right? So okay, any other questions, team? Anything else that you wanted to know about content? Let me check chat.
Hey, I have one question,
Sure.
Shibu and Aisha. So when we receive these emails from different companies, these marketing emails, and if you go and click and view source, before the email actually starts, like the template that we are seeing in the email, there is a lot of code before that in the email. And I understand that it is used to kind of ensure rendering works correctly across different devices, different
the
kind of
hacks.
browsers. Yeah. So I was wondering, is there a default good code that we can always use in our emails before like the actual template? Where do you get like what is the best practice to find this piece of
That
code?
is that is $1 million question. um, no code is the best code, but there are best practices. And a lot of the times, what I do is I am just constantly checking what several sites and attending different presentations to see what are the best ones. Like I can tell you straight off the bat that it's great to build emails in tables, but it's also interesting that people have built them in divs, right? But at the end
Mm-hmm.
of the day, you still have to have ghost tables surrounding the tables. So surrounding the divs, you have the ghost tables on top of that, and that's only specifically for like Outlook. But my favorite resources to have a better practice is actually Litmus, Email on Acid, and then Really Good Emails. Those three sites are my favorite. But if I had to go with one template and one template only, my favorite is from Ted Goas. And let me see if I can just drop a link. If not, I'm going to pass it on to Shibu, because I use Ted Goas's templates like crazy if I'm not using one for my organization. So in general, I would say read up as much as possible to make your most informed opinion, because there's a lot of different ways to build an email, and it also depends on your audience. So your answer's complex, but it's unfortunately the Wild West with email.
Okay, I have one more thing like on this related to this. So if I did a like if I'm previewing or if I'm doing a test send to my team and different people are kind of checking it on different email clients, and if I see something breaking in Yahoo, so what is
Yeah,
the like best way to find that fix for Yahoo browser? Like, is it just by Googling or is there a resource where we can go and see
I would
solutions
check.
for different clients?
So my two favorite places to check is actually Litmus and Email on Acid. First, for any of use the search functionalities for both of the websites, or just Google within using those sites as a
Okay.
part of your query. Check those
Mhm.
first, because I feel like those sites are the best at telling you what you can do to fix your templates, whether it's Yahoo, whether it's Outlook, whether it's Gmail, or anything else like that. I trust those more than almost any other resource. And then from there on out, I start venturing out and I go to my online communities and check to see where I can do it. Does that help?
Agree. Yeah, makes sense. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, any other questions, team? We have for Aisha.
Yeah, can we discuss the image carousel issue, which I asked with just
Sure,
on the day before?
sure. Go ahead.
Yeah, Aisha, when I was designing an email for testing purpose, I create an image carousel over there. And when I send that email on my Gmail email ID, the email carousel is not working. But when I click on the web preview, it was working. Also, it was working in the preview and test. Uh, this is the issue of Gmail and how we can resolve this issue. As so many people nowadays are of Gmail user and they are not going to open that email on the web version. So is there any way to solve these type of issue?
It might be that I'm thinking there's a render issue where it's ignoring the CSS. To fix that issue, I would just double check to see how it was built, and if you're thinking about the different sizes that are set up for that email. I would, when you're previewing it to,
He's specifically asking about the image carousel one.
For the image carousel. Oh, okay.
Yeah. So he was saying, like, when it works for the other different clients, but for Gmail, the preview works fine, but in the actual email, he was saying it doesn't render. And Gilda as well, like she was mentioning the other day, like, it's probably a Gmail constraint. It's probably not something that we can do on the Marketing Cloud side. But I guess Azim was asking if you have come across this issue before, and if there was any way we could resolve it.
To be perfectly transparent, I don't use the carousel on Content Builder.
Yeah.
When I did do carousel, which is a lot of fun, I actually found another resource and then I brought it in. Does carousel work on every single client? No, it doesn't. But there's a site that I could link you all to and double check afterwards in the presentation that Shibu can share with you guys, where you can build out your carousel in a more manual way, especially if you can develop that, you can start feeding it in more of a dynamic. It's more work, but there's more likelihood of it functioning. Will it work across the board? Like, let's say Gmail desktop, it won't, even if I give you this version. So unfortunately, there's only certain adoption on some of the clients, not all of them universally.
One more question, Aisha. If we put a image slider in the email, will it work?
Again, only certain clients.
So the entire Marketing Cloud is depend on the email clients.
Yeah, we're unfortunately, as email designers, developers, content creators, we are at the mercy of the actual client for the user.
Thank you.
So, yeah, I hope that helps.
Yeah, thank you.
Of course. Anyone else?
Okay. Going around quickly, team, do you have any more questions for Aisha? Okay, if not, I think we can wrap up. Thank you very much, Aisha, for taking time and sharing your experience. It was really helpful, especially when it comes from someone who's actually developed emails. So thank you very much. And thank you, team, for joining today. So we'll see you guys again next week. We have 3 more sessions left in our bootcamp. So join us. Like Jenna is part of How to SFMC as well. So she will be joining in on Monday to give you a little bit idea about tracking and reporting. And then I will be back with Journey Builder and Automation Studio the days after that. Okay. So everybody have a great weekend and we'll talk to you next week. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone. Have a good one.
Thank you, Aisha.
Bye.
Thank you, Shu.